Speak. Prosody rate equals 90%. Hey, can you imagine a princess of the Tang dynasty, sentenced to a lively tomb for her dazzling beauty? Discover the tragic story of Tz'u-hsi and the curse that pursues it. Subscribe and activate the bell so as not to miss anything. Prepare, because the story of Tz'u-hsi is an enigma wrapped in mystery. Imagine a time of splendor and cruelty, the Tang dynasty, where beauty could be a curse. It is said that Tz'u-hsi, a princess of incomparable beauty, was buried alive. Because that is the question that has resonated through the centuries, feeding legends and feeding the fascination for its tragic history. Some whisper that their beauty was so dazzling that it eclipsed the empress herself, awakening mortal jealousy in the court. Others speak of a prophecy, an omen of misfortune linked to their birth. The truth, as usual, has been lost in time, fragmented in contradictory versions, each more intriguing than the previous one, but what we do know is that his legend has endured. For centuries, the story of Tz'u-hsi has been transmitted from generation to generation, through stories, songs, and poems. Each narrative adds a new detail, a new layer of mystery to its dark legend. It is a story that reminds us of the fragility of life and the overwhelming power of superstition in past times. But what really is behind the legend? Imagine the greatness of Tang dynasty, an empire that flourished for centuries. Think of bustling cities, full of merchants, artisans, and artists, where silk flowed like golden rivers and the palaces rose to the sky, showing an impressive architecture. It was a time of luxury and refinement, where poetry and painting reached unmatched dimensions. But behind that facade of splendor, they hid dark secrets, palatial intrigues, and struggles for power. Power in the Tang court was a dangerous game, where alliances broke easily and betrayals were current currency. Beauty could be a powerful tool, but also a conviction. The secrets whispered in the halls of the palaces, secrets that could lead to ruin or greatness, depending on who knew them and how he used them. Life in court was a delicate balance between luxury and danger, opulence and death. But Tang dynasty was not limited to its palaces and court. It was a vast and powerful empire, with a rich and complex culture, which extended by vast regions. Art flourished in all its forms, from ceramics and sculpture to poetry and music. Technological innovations, prosperous trade, and cultural development made Tang dynasty a golden period in the history of China, a legacy that still lasts today. However, even in its peak, the shadow of uncertainty and mystery was always present. In the heart of the opulent Tang dynasty, Tz'u-hsi was born, a girl wrapped in silks and surrounded by unimaginable luxuries to most. His arrival in the world was announced with fanfare, as she was the daughter of an influential nobleman, promising him a life of privileges and comforts. But from birth, a dark shadow was projected on his future, an omen that no one could foresee. He grew up in a world of splendor, where every day was a celebration of beauty and power. Her delicate features, her porcelain skin, and her jet-black hair made her a dream vision, awakening the admiration of all who knew her. But that same beauty, which made her so special, would become her curse. His education was as refined as his environment, learning poetry, music, dance, and all the arts of the nobility. She was preparing for a luxury and privileged life, ignoring the dark destiny that awaited her. Meanwhile, her beauty grew with her, becoming increasingly impressive, a magnet that attracted looks and whispers. No one could imagine that this dazzling beauty, which made it an object of admiration and envy, would become the cause of its tragic end. His destiny, written in the stars or perhaps in the envious hearts of the court, was waiting for her patiently, hidden behind the mask of opulence and glamour of the Tang dynasty. But its beauty was not simply a physical trait. It was something deeper, an aura that radiated from her. Since childhood, Tz'u-hsi captivated with his penetrating gaze, his delicate features, and a smile that seemed to contain the promise of 1,000 dawns. His hair, jet black and long like a waterfall, became a perfect frame for his angelic face. People stopped in the streets just to observe it, leaving a respectful and admired silence in their path. Soon, his fame crossed the walls of the palace. Popular songs began to talk about their incomparable beauty, turning their name into a whisper into the lips of the courtiers, merchants, and even the humble peasants. Poetry was filled with descriptions of his grace and elegance, comparing it with lotus flowers and with the full moon. His reputation preceded his arrival anywhere, creating an expectation that few people could match. Prosody. Speak. Speak. The prosody rate equals 90%. Artists competed to portray their image, seeking to capture the essence of their ethereal beauty on their canvases. Each brushstroke tried to capture the luminosity of his skin, the softness of his lips, and the intensity of his dark eyes, but none seemed to be able to completely reflect the magic that surrounded her. His image became an object of desire, adorning fans, brocades, and even the walls of the temples, extending his legend beyond the borders of the empire. Its beauty, as I already told you, attracted the attention of princes and nobles of the entire empire. Imagine endless courtships, extravagant gifts, promises of a golden future, everything to earn the heart of Tz'u-hsi. Each of them, with its own way of courting it, tried to stand out among the multitude of fans. Some offered him poems full of made metaphors. Others gave him precious jewels brought from distant lands. But Tz'u-hsi, despite his youth, possessed acute intelligence and an independent spirit. It was not easily dazzled by luxury or power. He observed his suitors carefully, analyzing their intentions, their words, and their actions. She was looking for more than a title or fortune. He yearned for a true love, a deep connection that transcended the barriers of the imperial court. Some princes, desperate for their affection, resorted to more daring strategies, palaces, intrigues, false promises, even veiled threats, but Tz'u-hsi, with surprising serenity, remained immune to its tricks. His beauty was a magnet, yes, but his mind was even more powerful, capable of discerning the truth after the mask of flattery and power. But that rain of compliments did not fall alone on you that I in court. Among the company ladies, envy was breathed as the incense in a temple. Their friendly looks, they turned knives, their whispers poison disguised as compliments. They saw you as a threat, a too bright flower eclipsing all the others. Some, bolder, tried to sabotage you. An unbridled dress before an important ceremony. A perfume that caused you allergies subtly placed in your room. Small acts of evil that went unnoticed for others, but that you, with your sharp intuition, clearly perceived. The game was dangerous, and the bet, your reputation. The court was a maze of intrigues, where beauty could be both a blessing and a curse. And you, with your incomparable beauty, became the center of a perfect storm of envy and jealousy. Each smile, each gesture, was analyzed, interpreted, distorted to feed the rivalry flames. Your life became a constant struggle to maintain your position. But among the shadows of the court, a ray of hope shone for you. That he, a young calligraphy of the imperial family, with eyes like the dark jade and a smile that hid a deep sadness, saw you, not as an inaccessible princess, but as a woman. His furtive encounters, in the moonlight, among the trees of the imperial garden, were an oasis in your suffocating life. That he recited love poems, while you counted your secrets, your fears, your desires of a life beyond the protocol and envy. His letters, written with sandalwood ink, were the only bridge between the opulence of your golden prison and his world. A world that offered you a freedom that you had never experienced. Each word was an invisible caress, a promise of a future together, far from the palatial intrigues. It was a forbidden love. Yes, but it was also a fire that burned with intensity, feeding on clandestinity and passion. But happiness, like a delicate flower, is easily crushed. The suspicion, that poisonous snake that crawled through the palace halls, began to extend its tentacles. Murmulos, inquisitive looks, gossip that grew as weeds in the dark. Your secret romance, that spark of light in your life, became a threat to both, a danger that could consume them both in their flames. His love, blooming in secret, was threatened by an ancient prophecy. A sibyl of the court, with wrinkled face and eyes that seemed to see beyond time, had predicted the death of an incomparable beauty, a violent and premature death, sealed by an ancestral curse. The prophecy spoke of a forbidden love, a love that would bring misfortune and death to all involved. The young calligrapher, upon learning of the prophecy, felt a chill to travel his spine. You, Princess Tz'u-hsi, were the center of prediction. Your beauty, the same that had captivated it, was also the cause of your imminent destination. He, with his silent and desperate love, wondered if his presence was the curse in herself, an omen of misfortune. The prophecy not only talked about your death, but also about the ruin of those who loved you. A chain of misfortunes hunched over all who were close to you. Each smile, every caress, every shared moment seemed to shorten the time you had left, becoming every moment an advance of the tragedy. Fear seized both, a fear of a future that was already written. Prosody / speak. Speak to prosody rate equals 90%. The prophecy spoke of a death that would unleash a calamity about the empire. The emperor, a man with a severe face and penetrating look, knew the identity of the victim. Its beauty, praised by all, became a threat to the stability of the kingdom. A terrible decision hunched on him. Sacrifice his own daughter to save his people. The weight of the crown pressed his chest, while the image of his daughter, radiant and full of life, mixed with the gloomy vision of destruction. The love I felt for Tz'u-hsi faced the cold logic of imperial survival. How could your daughter condemn a safe death for a prophecy that could be just a superstition? But the Sibylla had been precise on other occasions, the question of their minds, while the directors, with their impassive faces, expected their decision. The destiny of the empire depended on a sacrifice that would tear his soul. After days of deliberation, sleepless nights, and a titanic internal fight, the emperor made a decision. His heart broke into 1,000 pieces, but the responsibility of governing a vast empire weighed more than his personal pain. The sacrifice should be done. The decree was signed, sealing the fate of Tz'u-hsi and the uncertain future of the kingdom. The beauty of the princess, once a source of admiration, was now the seed of her conviction. The emperor's decision resonated in the palace halls like thunder. You will wonder, who dared to conspire against an imperial princess? The answer, wrapped in shadows and secrets, pointed to the court itself. Hidden ambitions and palatial rivalries wove a network of deceptions where the beauty of Tz'u-hsi became a threat to many. There was talk of a conspiracy headed by an influential minister, jealous of the power that the Tz'u-hsi family had won. This man, a master of manipulation, had sown the seed of doubt in the emperor's mind, using prophecy as a tool for his perverse plan. He wove a network of lies, presenting the beauty of Tz'u-hsi as a threat to the stability of the empire. But I wasn't alone. Others, thirst for power or fearful of the influence of the princess's family, joined the conspiracy. Ambitious nobility, envious courtiers, everyone contributed to the fatal decision. The prophecy, distorted and manipulated, was the perfect weapon to justify their actions and cover their traces. The death of Tz'u-hsi, a tragedy, was the result of a network of palatial intrigues. The day dawned gray and oppressive, a reflection of the destiny that awaited you. Remember that the conspiracy had reached you. Its veil of shadows wrapped you inexorably. The preparations began in silence, a macabre ritual that developed with chilling efficiency. Servient with impassive faces moved as automatons, their steps damping by the heavy carpets of the palace. They dressed you with a sumptuous funeral suit, embroidered with gold and silk threads, a cruel irony considering your destiny. Each piece, every jewel, a reminder of the life that was taken from you. The air was loaded with incense, a sweet and suffocating aroma that failed to hide the smell of death that sinked over the palace. They placed you in the coffin, a lacquered wooden box and adorned with intricate engravings. The cold of the wood invaded you, an omen of the eternal cold that awaited you. The sound of the hammers sealing your grave resonated in your mind, a funeral echo that would accompany you for eternity. The darkness wrapped you, slowly and inexorably. They lead you for a long and narrow stone corridor. The cold humidity is crowded to the bones. The air is dense, loaded with a sepulchral silence that oppresses your chest. Every step you take with a disturbing echo, multiplying the feeling of loneliness and isolation. The torches that illuminate the road barely break the darkness, projecting grotesque shadows on wet walls. The smell of wet land and something indefinitely foul invades you, an omen of what awaits you. Finally, you arrive at an underground camera. It is huge, cold and dark, a vast and empty space that absorbs you completely. Silence is even deeper here, a vacuum that seems to swallow your breath. In the center, a black stone, simple and austere sarcophagus. It is your destiny, your eternal abode, a place where darkness and silence will be your only companions. The cold stone of the ground receives you when they kneel you. You feel the weight of the earth, the relentless pressure of the darkness that surrounds you. The air becomes denser, The lack of oxygen squeezes your chest. Your eyes close, the last rays of light fade in absolute blackness. Silence completely wraps you, an immense and scary vacuum that accompanies you to your final destination. Prosody, speak. Speak, prosody rate equals 90%. At the end of the corridor, a funeral chamber in the center, a bed of jade, on him, Tz'u-hsi motionless, dressed in silk clothes embroidered with gold threads, his face, pale and serene, contrasts with the opulence of his attic around it. Offerings. Jewelry, porcelain vessels, incenses that still give off a faint scent of spices. Silence is even deeper here, a silence that seems to absorb you. You watch the servants, their faces covered by wooden masks, making the last rites, with slow and precise movements. They place the latest offerings. A polished bronze mirror, an ivory comb, a jade chess game. Each object is placed with solemn reverence, as if each piece were a final whisper to the princess. The air is filled with an intense aroma to incense and flowers, and ancient Tz'u-hsi recites, his voice a whisper that is lost in the immensity of the tomb. The scene is both disturbing and fascinating, a mixture of sadness and solemnity. You feel a strange feeling of peace, but also a deep melancholy when contemplating the end of such a short and tragically beautiful life. Finally, the last servant retires, leaving Tz'u-hsi in his eternal rest. The heavy stone door closes with a deaf sound that rumbles in the dark, forever sealing the mystery of the buried princess alive. Silence, now total and absolute, envelopes you completely. You stay there, alone, in the cold darkness of the grave. Its beauty, immortalized in the golden silk, became the seed of a dark legend. They say that the serenity of his face masks a curse, an echo of his suffering that lasts through the centuries. That it is said that any man who tries to profane his grave, or even mention his name lightly, will be affected by a terrible misfortune and incurable disease, a sudden economic ruin. The curse of Tz'u-hsi is relentless. Generations of emperors and dignitaries have avoided mentioning their name, fearful of their legacy. The history of the buried princess alive has been transmitted in a whispered way, an ominous warning that has been woven in the tapestry of Chinese culture. Each generation has added its own interpretation to the legend, enriching it with new chilling details. Some say that his spirit wanders by the earth, seeking justice for his tragic destiny. Others believe that their curse is linked to the land itself where it lies buried, contaminated by its suffering. Whatever the truth, the legend of Tz'u-hsi is still alive, a gloomy reminder of the price of beauty and power in such a cruel era. It is said that the beauty of Tz'u-hsi was so dazzling that it caused the wrath of the gods. Some whisper that it was sealed alive not only for its beauty, but for a dark pact that made it eternally young. Imagine the darkness of these legends, transmitted from generation to generation, each story adding a new layer of mystery to its tragic history. Others say that their spirit still wanders by the palace, looking for revenge for its cruel destiny. They ensure that their supernatural beauty is manifested in dreams, appearing to those who dare to pronounce their name with disdain. Would you dare to challenge your curse, to make fun of your memory? The most chilling legend speaks of a curse that affects anyone who tries to profane their tomb. It is said that an invisible force protects its eternal rest, punishing intruders with inexplicable diseases, madness, or even death. It is a warning, a whisper in the wind, an echo of the suffering of Tz'u-hsi. But what's true in those legends? You will wonder if the story of Tz'u-hsi is just a myth, a dark fable transmitted through generations. The answer, as is usually the case, is in the investigation. Historians, with their meticulous analysis of former Chinese texts, seek any mention, any clue that can shed light on the life and death of the princess. Each registration, each brushstroke in an ancient scroll, is a possible fragment of the truth. Meanwhile, on the ground, archaeologists excavate patiently. Its tools, modern but respectful, look for vestiges of a forgotten grave, a ruined palace, any trace that can confirm or refute the legends that are woven around Tz'u-hsi. Each finding, however small, is one more piece of the puzzle that tries to reconstruct its history. The search for truth about Tz'u-hsi is a slow, thorough process, which requires patience and dedication. But every advance, each discovery, brings us a little closer to understanding the truth behind the fascinating and tragic story of the buried princess alive. Will you discover any conclusive evidence? Or will a mystery wrapped in legend remain Tz'u-hsi / prosody / speak? Speak, prosody rate equals 90%. Well, the answer is not found in ancient scrolls or jugger stories, but underground. Archaeological excavations in the region where it is said that Tz'u-hsi lived have revealed tombs of the Tang dynasty with female skeletons. Some show signs of a violent death, others of a hurried grave, without the funeral rituals of the nobility. Could they belong to the princess? The analysis of the bone remains has been crucial. Signs of malnutrition have been found in some skeletons, which suggests a possible deprivation during its captivity. Carbon dating 14 has placed the death of some of these women at the right time, coinciding with the chronology of the legend of Tz'u-hsi. Although there is no definitive test, archaeological evidence, although they do not confirm 100% history, do contribute a disturbing possibility. The coincidence between the legends, the chronology, and the bone remains of women buried in circumstances similar to those described in the legend of Tz'u-hsi force us to consider that at least a part of the story could be true. Or is it simply a macabre coincidence? But what really tell us these tombs? Some contain remains of young women with luxury objects, but also with indications of a violent or at least unexpected death. Could they be the remains of Tz'u-hsi and other victims of a cruel tradition? The disposition of the bodies, the presence of certain offerings. All this feeds the legend, although it does not completely confirm it. Research continues to unravel the mystery. Legends speak of a curse, a beauty that attracted the wrath of the gods or a cruel emperor. But the interpretation of these myths is complex. Was Tz'u-hsi a real figure or a creation of popular imagination? History is intertwined with mythology, and separating the truth from fiction is a challenge. Maybe the answer is in a balance between the two. Some scholars suggest that the legend of Tz'u-hsi could be a metaphor for human sacrifices that, according to some theories, were carried out in Tang era. Others believe that history reflects the fear of female beauty and its power, a power that, in a patriarchal society, should be controlled. Whatever interpretation, the legend of Tz'u-hsi tells us about a complex and fascinating era. So, was Tz'u-hsi a real princess buried alive for her dazzling beauty? The truth, as usually happens with legends, is much more complex. Many of the stories that are told about it are based on interpretations of archaeological findings, and sometimes those interpretations have been deformed over time, adding details that enrich the legend, but that do not necessarily reflect historical reality. It is possible that some of these tombs did belong to young women of high social position, killed in circumstances that cannot be determined precisely. The richness of the funeral trousseau found suggests a privileged life, but not necessarily a violent death related to a curse. Remember that many times the lack of information is filled with speculation, and thus the myths are born. Therefore, separating reality from fiction in this case is a challenge. The legend of Tz'u-hsi, although fascinating, could be an amalgam of different stories, exaggerations, and speculations about the remains found in the tombs of the Tang dynasty. What is true is that female beauty has always been a recurring theme in legends, and in this case, an archaeological mystery has joined to create a captivating narrative. Imagine Tang society, where female beauty was not only an attribute, but a form of power. Think of the women of the elite, with their pale and delicate faces, their carefully arched eyebrows, their lips painted of intense red. Its appearance reflected its status, its refinement, and, in a way, its value in society. That a perfect skin, free of imperfections, was a symbol of idealized purity and beauty. Makeup was an art, a daily ritual that transformed women into almost ethereal beings. The obsession with beauty was such that they were created elaborated beauty rituals, with exotic and expensive ingredients. The search for white skin, a symbol of nobility and social status, was achieved with different methods. You imagine these women using facial masks made of natural ingredients, spending hours under the sun to bleach their skin, or using special powders. The cult of beauty was full-time work, an almost ritualistic process. But that beauty was not just superficial. It represented an ideal of perfection, a reflection of social order and cosmic harmony. The idealized beauty in Tang dynasty was intrinsically linked to power and influence. That a beautiful woman was more likely to socially ascend, to marry, or even influence political decisions. Its beauty was a powerful weapon, a resource that could be used in its favor, and this, without a doubt, influenced the perception and fate of many women of the time. /prosody / speak. Speak, prosody rate equals 90%. But the beauty of Tz'u-hsi, so praised in life, what role did he play in his death? In Tang Dynasty, funeral customs were a reflection of social status. Imagine elaborate tombs, full of objects that represented the life of the deceased, from clothing and jewels to buried servants alive to accompany him in the other life. For someone from high society such as Tz'u-hsi, their funeral should be a show of unparalleled wealth and opulence. Think about the effort involved in preparing a tomb like this. Months, perhaps years, work to build a funeral chamber worthy of a princess. Expert artisans working in the stature of wood, the creation of clay figures, the elaboration of exquisite fabrics, everything to accompany Tz'u-hsi on his trip to the beyond. And let's not forget the value objects, those that reflected their position and their beauty. But opulence was not limited to objects. It was believed that the deceased needed company on his trip, and in many cases, servants were buried with his master or loves. A cruel practice, yes, but that reflected the beliefs of the time. For someone like Tz'u-hsi, the number of servants who would accompany her in death could have been considerable, an extreme sacrifice to ensure her comfort in the beyond. Think of a woman's life in Tang Dynasty. For you, what images do they come to mind? Probably a mixture of luxury and oppression. The women of the elite enjoyed a relatively comfortable life with access to education, arts, and certain economic privileges. They could even participate in family businesses or administer their own properties. However, his freedom was significantly limited by rigid social norms. Marriage, for example, was an arranged issue, where women's opinion used to be irrelevant. His main role was that of wife and mother, and his value was measured for his ability to give birth to male heirs. Fidelity was fundamental. Infidelity could have devastating consequences. While some women from rich families could have a certain level of autonomy in the management of their affairs, they were always under the authority of a man, be it his father, husband, or son. Despite these limitations, some women managed to transcend social expectations. Some became influential poets, recognized painters, or even powerful political figures, although this was the exception, not the rule. Their access to education and resources allowed them to develop their talent, but always within the close margins that society allowed them. Beauty, as in the case of Tz'u-hsi, could be a blessing and a curse at the same time. Imagine the life of Tz'u-hsi under the influence of Buddhism. Majestic temples, with their golden Buddhas and the serenity of the monks reciting sutras, could have offered a counterpoint to the opulence of the court. Can you imagine Tz'u-hsi participating in a Buddhist ceremony, surrounded by incense and lotus flowers? Maybe looking for comfort or an escape to your destination. Taoism, with its emphasis on harmony with nature and the search for immortality, could also have had an impact on your life. Think of the Zen gardens, the mountainous landscapes, the search for longevity. Would you have sought Tz'u-hsi immortality through Taoist practices, perhaps as a way to escape its tragic destination? Finally, Confucianism, with its emphasis on social hierarchy and filial duty, would have deeply molded its life. As a woman of the elite, Tz'u-hsi would have been subject to a strict code of conduct. Confucianism, with its rigid moral values, would he have contributed to his situation, or perhaps he would have offered him a framework to understand his role in society. But the story of Tz'u-hsi did not get buried with her. Through the centuries, its legend has been woven in the tapestry of Chinese popular culture. Think of the innumerable plays, operas, and stories that have resumed their tragic story, adapting and reinterpreting it through different lenses. Can you imagine the strength of its beauty, turned into an immortalized curse in art? In literature, his name evokes a mixture of fascination and horror. Some present it as an innocent victim, sacrificed for their own beauty. Others show it as a symbol of cruelty and arbitrariness of power. You can find different versions of its history, each with unique nuances, which reflect the concerns and values of their time. Even in modern cinema and television, the figure of Tz'u-hsi continues to resonate. Series and films have adapted their history, adding fantasy, mystery, and romance elements to captivate new generations. Its history, although tragic, has transcended time, becoming a recurring motive in popular narrative. Prosody, speak. Speak, to prosody rate equals 90%. Imagine the poets of the Tang Dynasty, their brushes submerged in Chinese ink, evoking the tragic beauty of Tz'u-hsi. Her poems, surely, described her with a delicacy that contrasts with the cruelty of her destiny, verses that captured the ephemeral perfection of his face, the grace of his movements, before the earth claim it forever. Can you imagine the sadness that impregnated each line, every brushstroke, remembering its young life taken? In the novels, its history is reinterpreted, it is magnified. Sometimes, its beauty becomes a symbol of human fragility against power, a mirror that reflects the contradictions of the imperial court. Other times, it becomes an allegorical character, a warning about vanity and ambition. How do you perceive it through these literary interpretations? Think of the poetic force needed to capture a destiny as cruel as that of Tz'u-hsi. Legend has become a metaphor, an enduring symbol in Chinese literature. Each poem, every novel, adds one more layer to its legacy, perpetuating its memory through the written word, making it more than a buried princess alive, a timeless literary character. But how has the legend of Tz'u-hsi arrived on the screen? I imagine that you wonder, right? Well, although its history has not been as exploited as that of other Chinese historical figures, Tz'u-hsi has appeared in different productions, generally as a secondary character, a wink to legend, or even an inspiration for stories with similar plots. Think of the tragic beauty that embodies an element that is usually attractive to screenwriters. Perhaps in some time series set in the Tang Dynasty, you have encountered an exceptional beauty woman, whose destiny is marked by a tragedy. Without being Tz'u-hsi explicitly, their history inspires creators to explore the issues of beauty, power, and cruelty of the imperial court that in those adaptations. Your name may not be mentioned, but your essence, your mystery, endures on the screen. It is possible that in the future we see a film production or a series that focuses completely on its history, reconstructing its life and its tragic end. It would be fascinating to see how the filmmakers adapt the legend to the screen, exploring the complex relationship between beauty, destination, and power in the imperial court of the Tang Dynasty. Who knows, maybe you are witnessing that adaptation one day. But the story of Tz'u-hsi is not unique. If you look good, you will see similarities with other legends of princesses sacrificed for political reasons or for their extraordinary beauty. Think of Greek stories, where beauty often associated with fatality. Does the story of Helena de Troy sound to you, whose beauty unleashed a war? Although circumstances differ, both stories share the conductive thread of a beauty that triggers a tragic destiny. Unlike some Western legends where beauty is a gift that attracts misfortune, in the history of Tz'u-hsi, its beauty becomes a political danger that must be eliminated. This is the difference of European legends that focus the tragedy on the destiny or anger of the gods, while in the Chinese legend, there is an element of political control and calculation behind the sacrifice. Beauty is not simply a catalyst. It is a strategic factor. Even within the Chinese context, the legend of Tz'u-hsi is distinguished from other sacrifice stories. While some legends speak of ritual sacrifices or to appease the gods, the story of Tz'u-hsi focuses on a palatial conspiracy, on the cold manipulation of the imperial court. In it, beauty becomes a power tool, a double-edged sword that ultimately leads to the destruction of its carrier. It is a story with a political dimension that differentiates it. So what about the curse? Is it just a spooky legend to scare the young women of the imperial court? Or is there the possibility that the death of Tz'u-hsi was linked to more than a simple political decision? Many historians are inclined to the second option, arguing that the narrative of the curse served as a tool to mitigate the impact of a cruel political act, disguised as inevitable destiny. The beauty of the princess, in that context, becomes a danger symbol, a threat that should be controlled. Think about it. A narrative that attributes death to supernatural forces, to a curse, is much easier to accept than the cold reality of a political murder. Superstition, at that time, was a powerful force. People believed in the power of hidden forces, in the influence of spirits and prophecies. Using this collective belief to justify such a terrible action was an intelligent political strategy, although terribly ruthless. Prosody, speak. Speak to prosody rate equals 90%, therefore, the curse of Tz'u-hsi could be interpreted as a product of the time, a way of manipulating the narrative to hide the truth behind a political act. The beauty of Tz'u-hsi, far from being the cause of his misfortune, became an excuse, a pretext to hide the brutality of reality. Was it a real curse, or a superstition conveniently used to justify a crime. Imagine the imperial court, yourself in the midst of that opulent atmosphere and, at the same time, loaded with a palpable tension. The story of Tz'u-hsi, the buried princess alive, had become an elongated shadow that was projected on each young lady. Fear slid as an invisible snake between silk dresses and bright jewels, sowing uncertainty in each heart. Suddenly, beauty, once a coveted attribute, was now perceived as a potential curse. Each smile became an insecure gesture, every look, a challenge to an uncertain destination. The laughs echoed with an echo of fear, a constant whisper of "could be me." The legend of Tz'u-hsi had created an atmosphere of silent paranoia, where joy was dyed of a bitter feeling. The uncertainty had taken over the court. The parents looked at their daughters with a mixture of pride and terror, aware of the fragility of beauty and power of legend. Rumors extended like a slow fire, feeding fear and speculation. Each disease, every misfortune, was attributed to the curse of Tz'u-hsi, reinforcing the belief in its ominous possession. Life in the imperial court, once a symbol of luxury and splendor, had now become a dangerous game, a constant dance between beauty and terror. The legend of Tz'u-hsi, although tragic, transcended the walls of the palace. That it became a whisper between people, a warning about excessive ambition and beauty that could be a curse. Imagine how, through generations, the history of the princess was transformed, adapting to the beliefs and fears of each era. It was mixed with other legends, giving rise to new interpretations and morals. For some, Tz'u-hsi became a symbol of female fragility in a world dominated by men. For others, an example of cruelty inherent in power. Its history, told and recantada, molded the popular perception of life in the imperial court, feeding both the fascination and the suspicion towards the aristocracy. Even in literature and art, the influence of Tz'u-hsi became evident. Poets and artists were inspired by their tragic story, creating works that reflected the ephemeral beauty and cruelty of destiny. Think of the paintings, the sculptures, the poems, all of them, in a way, testimonies of their lasting legacy. Thus, through the centuries, the buried princess alive left an indelible mark on Chinese culture. Its history, a constant reminder of the complexity of power, beauty, and death, continues to resonate in the collective imaginary, a testimony of its lasting legacy. Think about Tz'u-hsi. His beauty, praised by all, became his conviction. What tells you about the ephemeral nature of beauty? Is it just a mask that hides the fragility of life? The story of Tz'u-hsi reminds us that beauty, although dazzling, is not a guarantee of happiness or immortality. Its history is a deep echo in time, a whisper that questions us about the true value of existence. Perhaps the death of Tz'u-hsi was not an end, but a transformation, a transition to an unknown plane, a mystery that remains. His legend lasts, hides a narrative that challenges us. What happens after beauty? What remains when life fades? The answer is not written in stone, but in personal reflection, in the search for a sense beyond the superficial. Buddhist philosophy, so present at the time of Tang Dynasty, talks about impermanence. Everything changes, everything flows. Beauty, life, death, are stages of a continuous cycle. The story of Tz'u-hsi, although died of tragedy, invites us to contemplate that essential truth. Beauty is not eternal, but memory, legend, can transcend time. What legacy do you want to leave? Think about how the story of Tz'u-hsi, despite the centuries, continues to resonate. Its tragic history, a mixture of beauty and cruelty, has become a metaphor for social pressure, obsession with the appearance and destructive power of envy. Today, his legend invites us to reflect on the superficiality of a world that still prioritizes physical beauty over the essence. The legend of Tz'u-hsi remains alive in art, literature, and cinema. He is reinterpreted in various ways, adapting to modern times, but always maintaining his tragic essence. It is a story that questions you, which makes you question the perception of beauty and the value we give to life itself. How many times have we seen its history reflected in contemporary tragedies? Prosody. Speak. Speak, to prosody rate equals 90%. In a world obsessed with the image, the story of Tz'u-hsi serves as a warning. his beauty, praised and envied, led her to death. Its legend reminds us that true beauty lies in authenticity, in the inner strength, in the value of life itself, beyond the aesthetic canons imposed by society. Remember, you are much more than your physical appearance. So what is left of Tz'u-hsi? A name whispered through the centuries, a legend that persists. Its history, a mixture of tragic beauty and ruthless cruelty, reminds us of the fragility of life and the relentless power of social conventions. Was it really buried alive? That question, friend, is still unanswered, feeding the mystery that surrounds it. The lack of concrete evidence allows the legend to flush. Imagine for a moment. What secrets are hidden under the ground where they say it lies? Will there be any evidence that one day the truth reveals? Perhaps, the truth is lost forever in the dust of history, leaving space for interpretations and speculation. But perhaps, that mystery is precisely what makes it so fascinating. The story of Tz'u-hsi thus becomes an enigma, a reflection of our own search for truth, of our fascination with the unknown. Through it, we explore the limits of beauty, power, and sacrifice. And you, what do you think? What is your interpretation of its history? Many ask me if Tz'u-hsi was really buried alive. The truth, friend, is that the story is based on legends and stories transmitted orally for centuries. There are no conclusive evidence that confirms or denies this terrible end. What we do know is that its beauty was legendary, and that its life, short and full of mystery, fed countless stories, some more fantasy than others. Was Tz'u-hsi a real princess? Here the thing is complicated. Some stories present it as a member of the nobility, others as a simple courtesan of exceptional beauty. The lack of reliable historical records makes it difficult to determine their social status exactly. What we do know is that its history transcended its origin, becoming a myth. And the curse? Is it real? Well, the idea of a curse associated with his name is, without a doubt, a fascinating part of the legend. It is said that those who try to unravel their history suffer from terrible consequences. It may be simply a metaphor for the difficulty of accessing the truth, or maybe something else. Up to you. Finally, where can I find more information? The truth is that information about Tz'u-hsi is scarce and scattered. Many sources are based on popular legends and stories, which makes it difficult to separate reality from fiction. However, the search in itself can be an adventure, a search for truth and mystery. So where can you find more information about Tz'u-hsi? Well, the truth is that information about her is fragmentary. Most of what we know comes from popular stories and legends transmitted from generation to generation. There are no official records of the Tang dynasty that directly mention their history, which complicates things a lot. But that does not mean that there are no clues. I recommend looking for Chinese legends and anthologies, especially those that collect stories from the Tang era. Many times, these legends hide among other stories, as small gems waiting to be discovered. Look for academic works that analyze these legends, since they can offer you crucial historical interpretations and analysis to understand the context in which the history of Tz'u-hsi emerged. In addition, exploring online academic databases can be a great help. Look for articles and theses that focus on the culture, history, and legends of the Tang dynasty. You may find indirect references to history or studies on the oral tradition of the time that help you complete the puzzle. Remember that historical research is sometimes like putting together a puzzle, and every small piece counts. Finally, do not forget to consult history books of the Tang dynasty in Spanish or English. Although the direct mention of Tz'u-hsi is unlikely, these books can provide an essential socio-cultural context to understand the time and the possible roots of its legend. Remember that history is not always written in stone, and sometimes the truth is found in spaces between lines. And now, a moment to thank everyone who made this video possible. First, to you, for dedicating your time and curiosity. Without your interest, this project would not make sense. Thank you for exploring with me the shadows and lights of the history of Tz'u-hsi, a figure as fascinating as enigmatic. Your support is my greatest reward. I also want to thank the researchers and academics whose jobs have guided me on this trip. His investigations, although sometimes contradictory, have been essential to rebuild life, or at least one approach to it, from Tz'u-hsi. His dedication to historical truth has been the basis of this video. /prosody/speak. Speak. The prosody rate equals 90%. Of course, I cannot forget my edition and production team. His talent, patience, and dedication have transformed my ideas into something visually attractive and understandable. Thank you for your hard work and for turning this project into a reality. Your effort has been invaluable. And finally, thanks to you again, to get here that I hope you enjoyed this trip through time and history of Tz'u-hsi. Your presence here is the best recognition of all the effort made. Until the next adventure. And speaking of projects that could not exist without the help of others, I want to greatly thank the entire team that has worked side with me in the creation of this video. From exhaustive research to the millimeter edition, each person has contributed their talent and dedication. I couldn't have done it without them. Really. In particular, I want to mention editor's name, whose critical eye and mastery in the edition has shaped the narrative you see on screen. Its patience and precision have been fundamental to achieve the final result. And of course, I cannot forget the investigator's name, whose exhaustive research on Princess Tz'u-hsi has been the basis of this entire project. In addition, I want to thank the composer's name, whose music has managed to transport you to the time of the Tang Dynasty, creating the perfect atmosphere to immerse yourself in history. His talent has added an essential emotional layer to the narrative. And finally, but not least, thanks to all those who have contributed to your suggestions and comments. Your support and feedback are invaluable to me. Each like, comment, and subscription motivates me to continue creating quality content. Thank you again for being there, for your time, and for being part of this exciting adventure. See you in the next video. And speaking of extras, get ready to immerse yourself even more in the world of Tz'u-hsi. In the description you will find links to high-resolution images of the costume designs and the atmosphere of the Tang Dynasty that we use in the video. You can appreciate every detail, from the intricate embroidery of their clothes to the architecture of the imperial palaces. Examine them calmly. I assure you that you will discover many details that may escape you during the video. In addition to the fixed images, I have prepared a small additional video with scenes deleted from the final assembly. You will see some alternative shots behind the cameras of the filming, and some curiosities of the video creation process that I could not include in the main edition. It is an exclusive look at what happens behind the cameras. And for the most curious, I have also included some links to articles and documentaries about the Tang Dynasty and the history of China. If you want to deepen the historical context of the legend of Tz'u-hsi, this additional information will be of great help to better understand the time and culture in which our history develops. I hope you like it. And now, what awaits you in the future of this channel? Well, get ready, because we have a lot of surprises. In the next videos we will deepen the life of other fascinating figures of the Tang Dynasty. Exploring their stories, their mysteries and legacies, we will learn about their customs, their beliefs, and how the society of the time influenced their lives. That I assure you that it will not disappoint you. In addition to new stories, we will also explore specific aspects of Tang culture in detail. We will talk about architecture, fashion, art, and poetry of this golden age in Chinese history. I will show you incredible images. I will tell you fascinating anecdotes, and I will give you curious data that will make you see the Tang Dynasty with other eyes. Prepare for a trip to the past. And that's not all. I am also preparing a series of videos dedicated to unraveling the most enigmatic mysteries and legends of ancient China. There will be stories of powerful emperors, legendary warriors, and mythical creatures that will leave you breathless. Do not miss the opportunity to discover the hidden secrets after the official history. Subscribe to not miss anything. I hope you enjoyed the story of Tz'u-hsi. If you liked it, give like and subscribe for more fascinating stories. What do you think about your tragic destiny? /prosody/speak